Our second module is on marriage and its significance as a social institution. Every kind of human grouping comes into being and is maintained through a process of recruitment by which various persons become its members. In every human family, the majority of its members are recruited into it by being born into it. But before children can be born, some women in patrilocal societies, men in matrilocal societies must be recruited into it. A family comes into being through such a communication of spouses. Marriage is the socially recognized form of such recruitment through communication. Marriage and the family being two aspects of the same social reality, that is, the biopsychic cum social drives, needs of man are coeval with each other and with culture, because without the family there could be no preservation of the species and culture, and without marriage there could be no family. The possibilities of sex gratification, irregular and or institutionalized, outside the family being present in every society, the conclusion becomes compelling that although regularized and socially sanctioned sex gratification is a basic reason for the formation of the family and the institution of marriage, yet it is not the only or the final cause. Satisfaction of sexual life is implied in a healthy and normal physical survival, but the exact manner that this satisfaction takes place is decided by the cultural traditions of a people. Biopsychic needs always present themselves to us as culturally reoriented drives. The need for a dependable social mechanism for the care and rearing of children and also for the transmission of culture constitute further important motives. Marriage ensures a biological satisfaction, that of sex, and a psychological satisfaction, that of having children, on the individual plane. On the wider collective plane, it ensures a twofold survival, that is, that of the group and its culture. Besides, the economic organization of some tribes, if found so much dependent upon cooperation and division of labor between the two sexes, that a stable functioning is possible only when the two sexes enter into socially sanctioned and permanent or semi-permanent relations with each other, that is, to marry. The limited food gathering economy of the Kadar, the full participation in the day-to-day economic pursuits by women among the Andaman Islanders and the Maria Gunds makes it imperative that men and women marry. The nature of the marital bond is basically the same everywhere. It involves the social sanction, generally in the form of a civil or religious economy, authorizing two persons of opposite sexes to engage in sexual and the other consequent and correlated socio-economic relations with one another. The marital bond among the tribes of India is found to bring together not just two individuals, but two families, even kindreds and villages. It is not a tool meant to secure for individual satisfaction of a highly personal character, but a social mechanism designed to create and foster social solidarity. In contemporary urban society, it is the highly individualistic and personal aspect of marriage that is emphasized. Forms of marriage. Marriage can be of several types. All over tribal India and in other parts of the world as well, we come across rules laying down prohibitions, preferences and prescriptions in deciding the form of marriage. Preference and prohibition. A taboo on sexual relations between closely related kin like parents and children and between siblings is universal. An extension of this nuclear prohibition is found everywhere, including among the castes and tribes of India. The cultural factor of widening the area of cooperative social contact may be considerably responsible for this prohibition on sex relations between close relatives. Breaches of the rule are often punished by inflicting heavy fines upon or excommunicating the offender. The fear of supernatural punishment in the case of the violation of the rule of marrying out is widespread in tribal and rural India. This above mentioned practice of marrying outside one's clan is called exogamy. A breach of exogamy brings disaster to the Kasi. It entails excommunication, refusal of funeral ceremonies, and no resting place in the sepulchre of the clan. The reverse practice of marrying within one's tribe, or very rarely clan, is called endogamy. The two main clans of the Toda tribe, the Tartarol and the Teveliol, are endogamous, but their subdivisions, the Sibs, are exogamous. The Bil also have two similar endogamous groups, the Ujale Bil and the Malay Bil. Due to the universal fear of the strange, the novel and the unknown, almost all Indian tribes and other groups are generally endogamous. Levirate and sororate. Preferential marriages are often designed to promote interfamilial cordiality by making certain linkages imperative. Among the Toda, the practice has been for one woman to marry several brothers, fraternal or adelphic polyandry. This practice of being a mate, actual or potential, to one's husband's brothers is called levirate. When several sisters are simultaneously or potentially the spouses of the same man, the practice is called sororate. It is generally found to prevail among the tribes that pay a bride price for a wife. The death of a spouse is compensated by supplying a new spouse, generally a younger sister of the deceased. Levirate and sororate emphasize the acceptance of interfamilial obligations and the recognition of marriage as a tie between two families and not only between two individuals. Polygamy. Polygamy, that is the marriage to more than one person, is fairly widespread all over the world. Murdoch reports 78% polygamous families in his sample of 250. In tribal India also, polygamous modes is widespread. Two forms of polygamy may be differentiated. Polygyny is the marriage of one man to several women, and polyandry, the marriage of one woman to several men. Both types of marriage are referred to as polygamy in common parlance. Polygyny is found among the Naga tribes, the Gond, the Balga, the Toda, the Lushe clans, and most of the other Proto-Australoid tribes of Middle India. The Kasi, the Santal, and the Khadar are among those that are monogamous. Excessively high bride prices have forced polygyny on many. Example, the Ho. Polyandry is comparatively much restricted in distribution. It is found among the Tian, the Toda, the Kota, the Khasa, and the Ladakhi Bota. From Kashmir to Assam, among the Indo-Aryan as also the Mongoloid peoples, polyandry is reported. The Nayars were polyandrous, and there are many survivors of the custom found among them even today. In India, polyandry is of two types. When several brothers share the same wife, as among the Khasa and the Toda, we have adelphic or fraternal polyandry. In the general type, also found among the Toda, there need not be any close relationship between the husbands, and the wife goes to spend some time with each husband. So long as a woman lives with one of her husbands, the others have no claim over her. Nayar polyandry was of this type. Polyandry is not everywhere explicable with references to a preponderance of men over women, as was pointed out by Westermarck. In Ladakh, it was actually the women who were more in number. Among the Toda, property considerations and sex disparity explain this institution. Hypergamy. Under the kind of social structure that caste has given rise to in India, there are certain restrictions in the form of limits beyond which a man and a woman cannot go in the choice of spouse. Of course, he or she must invariably marry outside of his or her own gotra. Hypergamous annuloma marriage, under which a man can marry from his own caste or from those below. But a woman can marry only in her caste or above. Hypogamy, pratyloma, the marriage of a woman to a man from a lower caste is not permitted. Ways of acquiring mates. The manner in which mates can be acquired are various in tribal India. Marriage is generally regarded as a civil contract, as not a religious sacrament, and therefore religious solemnization does not take place everywhere. Marriage brings together not just two individuals but two families in a network of social obligations. Probationary marriage, marriage by capture, marriage by trial, marriage by purchase, marriage by service, marriage by exchange, marriage by mutual consent and elopement, and marriage by intrusion. Probationary marriage has been reported from among the Kuki. They permit a young man to live with his sweetheart in the latter's house for weeks together, after which, if they so decide, they marry each other. In case the couple do not find each other's temperament to be suitable and compatible, they separate, and the young man pays cash compensation to the girl's parents. Marriage by capture is growing rare with social advances and the widening application of the Indian Penal Code. However, it continues up to date to be one of the ways of acquiring a mate among the Naga tribes, fear of raids having in the past led to female infanticide. Cases of capture have also been reported from the Ho, who call it Oportipi, and the Gund, who call it Posi Otur, and the Bil, and several other pre-Dravidian tribes. Several indications are found to bear witness to a possible former widespread use of this method among the Gund. Thus, the bride's party make a pretense of resistance when the bride is carried away. A mock fight takes place, and the bride is expected to weep and lament on the occasion. Among the Ho, it is the exorbitant rate of bride price that often leads to marriage by capture, which may often be prearranged. Besides physical capture, there is also a ceremonial capture. Thus, among the Karya and the Birhor, a man desirous of marrying a woman whom he cannot acquire by a more straightforward method would lie in wait for her in a public place or at a fair, and then surprise her by applying vermilion mixed with oil to her forehead. This is regarded as being tantamount to marriage. Marriage by trial is the recognition of personal courage and bravery as highly desirable traits in a young man. Some tribes require a young man to prove his prowess before he can claim the hand of any girl in marriage. If he succeeds in the task assigned to him, he has the right to name any girl as his wife. Among the Bil, such a practice is reported to prevail even now. During the holy festival, young men and women practice a folk dance around a pole or a tree to the top of which coconut and good are tied. Anybody is free to dance around this tree. The women make an inner right of dancers around the tree and the men an outer ring. The trial of strength begins when a young man attempts to break through the inner ring to to reach and climb the tree to eat the good and break open the coconut. The women dancers resist his attempt by tearing at his clothes and hair, by striking him with broomsticks, and by even tearing at his flesh, though all this is done in good faith. If, in spite of all these obstacles, a daring man succeeds in reaching the top of the tree, he has the right to choose any of the surrounding girls as his wife and take her away immediately. Marriage by what has been called purchase is found prevalent all over tribal India. The Naga tribes pay a bride price, and so do the tribes in Middle India. Bride price may be paid in cash or kind or both. Thus, we find that the bride price among Chota Nagpur tribes has none of these moral virtues which it has among the Rengma Naga. It has been pointed out that the absence of bride price among the O and the Angami Naga has resulted in low status for women and prostitution, and that it is bride price which has protected the Rengma women from these ills. In Chota Nagpur too, bride price was meant, as in Assam, to be a stabilizing and a useful factor, but its persistence in a partially changed and ill-adjusted cultural setting has made it injure more those very interests which it was intended to serve. Some of the tribes have arrived at a solution to this problem of high bride price. Thus, if a Gond or a Baiga finds himself not in a position to pay the bride price, he goes to serve in his would-be father-in-law's house as a suitor servant. Gonds call him Lamana and Baiga Lamsena or Gaharia, and marries the desired girl after a lapse of some years, after which they both return to his household. Yet another means of avoiding the payment of bride price is through the device of two households exchanging women with each other. This is found practically all over India. Some tribes like the Kasi, however, prohibit such marriage. It has already been said that child marriage is a new phenomenon in tribal India, a result of contact with Hindu neighbors. Previously, only adults entered into married life, and therefore almost everywhere marriage by mutual consent with parents' approval was the general rule. Particularly, those tribes having the youth dormitories allowed free scope to the individual in the choice of his or her mate. However, in case the parents' consent was not forthcoming, an elopement has generally been the way out, and the indulgent elders have always received back the over-fond couple. Even now, such marriages do take place. We have referred to physical and ceremonial capture by a young man of a girl he is fond but who will not marry him. The opposite case of a girl desirous of marrying an unwilling young man is also found. There are reports of such girls thrusting themselves on the unwilling young men. Such marriages may be called marriages by intrusion. The Birhor and the Ho are among the tribes that practice it. The Ho call it very appropriately anadar, meaning that which involves being humiliated or disrespected. The over-fond girl is actually subjected to insulting and harsh treatment, often beaten, turned out and refused food, but she refuses to abandon her intentions and finally is accepted as one of those impossible persons before whose obstinate will one has to yield. Premarital and extramarital sex relations. All over tribal India, premarital relations are generally free. Much value is not set on virginity. In Middle India, premarital liaisons are overlooked unless, of course, they lead to pregnancy, which is generally regarded as shameful for the girl's parents, even if the pregnancy be caused by a suitor servant's attentions. Among some tribes like the Murya, adolescent life is one of preparation for all the activities of adult life, and in their dormitories, grown-up girls are often found to train younger boys in the art of love and sex life. Extramarital sex relations are not so easily tolerated. One of the main causes of Maria murder and suicide has been reported to be marital infidelity, divorce. Dissolution of marriage is made difficult if it is regarded as a religious sacrament, which is not the case with Indian tribes. Consequently, we find that divorce is commonly practiced and may be obtained by one of the parties refusing to continue to live in wedlock by abandoning the spouse. The Kasi permit divorce for reasons of adultery, barrenness and incompatibility of temperament, but the separation can take place only after mutual consent. In some cases, the party desiring the dissolution may have to pay compensation to the other party. There is no possibility of remarriage between two such people who have been separated by divorce. The divorce has to be a public ceremony. The mother gets the custody of the children. Among the Lushe, the dissolution of marriage is a much simpler affair. If a husband turnouts his wife, he must pay the balance of the bride price if any is due. However, if his wife deserts him or is caught in adultery, she has to arrange for the return of the bride price her husband paid for her. A second marriage between those once divorced is possible. Among the Kuki also, divorce is easily obtained. The Kariya also permit the right to demand a dissolution to either party on grounds of marital infidelity, sterility of the wife, laziness, refusal of the wife to live with her husband, theft and abjuration by the village panchayat that the wife is a witch. It may be noted that none of these charges, except perhaps the first one, is ever preferred against the husband. Instances of divorce can be cited from all the known tribes of India. Widow marriages have been practiced all over tribal India. Children. Tribal folk often do not share this religious idea, but their attitude towards children is one of joyful acceptance. Adoption is widely practiced all over tribal India. Thus, among the Lushe, if a person of means has no child, he often adopts one. It is a private affair, no special ceremony is required. The same is also true of the Kuki clans like the Tado. If in a Kasi family, all female members have died out, then the male members are permitted to choose a daughter of another family and are allowed to call her their own daughter. She performs the family religious ceremonies and inherits the family property. From Middle India, there are similar instances of the widespread practice of adoption, and it must be noted that in all these cases, the adopted child enjoys the same rights and privileges as one's own child would. Thank you.